Hey guys, what's up? So, like I've been doing the last few days, I've been doing a lockdown quiz just to keep you guys entertained. I know with the current situation ongoing and the fact that we can't understand as and when we're going to be able to do what we, go out properly without having this over our heads. I've been doing anime-based quizzes. Today we're looking at Beyblade. More specifically, we're actually only going to be looking at the first season, not V-Force, not G-Revolution, the original Beyblade itself. Reason I'm doing this is it's the one that kind of sticks in my head the most, and it's the one, even if I haven't watched in quite a while, certain things trigger back in my memory, and therefore it's quite easy for me to actually do these questions without having to go back into too much detail, without having to try and refine that information. Okay, so the first question is, what happened during the first encounter between Tyson and Max? They actually met each other before they ended up in the same tournament and before they actually became friends. A situation happened, and I just want to know from you guys what exactly happened. This happened within one of the first episodes. It's quite a nice moment between Tyson and Max. I'm not going to actually give you any clues as to what's happened. Just comment down below whatever you think. There's only a few options you can really think of. And good luck with that. And the answer is they both used their Beyblades in order to rescue a puppy. Basically what happened was the puppy, being as young as it was, wasn't aware of the risks within a river and had actually ended up going into it for some reason. Tyson and Max were at the riverbank anyway and witnessed what had happened. Tyson tried to... there was a tree trunk, I believe, or something, or like wooden sticks that were used to try... he tried to launch his Beyblade at to try and fix it in a certain position so that the puppy could hold on to it. However, he kind of missed his target. In contrast, Max had much better aim and was more prepared to deal with the situation, because he later explains, after they rescue the puppy, that his dad owns the local game shop, which has all the Beyblade parts. They actually have a Bay Battle in the shop. I think they have in their in their basement a tournament legal battle stadium. They launch their blades. Tyson goes heavily into the attack, however ends up losing out to Max's steel wall defense, which is of course Max's specialty. They end up becoming friends in that way. Okay, so question 2 is going to be slightly more tricky. Which member of the White Tigers that appeared in the original series did not feature afterwards? This member was actually only seen in one situation, and you might actually remember it. If you look at the current White Tiger members, that might actually also help to give you a clue as to how this came about. And the answer is Bruce. He appeared within episode 8 of the series, so just as they were... the Blade Breakers were trying to get to the Asian tournament. They had to stop off somewhere. They ended up being challenged by him. It turns out a little bit later in that when he loses to Tyson, that he was being bribed by Kevin, who is a member of the White Tigers, and saying that if Bruce proves himself by defeating Tyson, that he would then earn the right to become a member. He uses a nunchuck launcher, which he grabs with both hands and launches, producing a much faster spin rotation for his Beyblade. Not Lee, it was Ray, who was one of the blade breakers, says that he's not seen that technique before. He ends up using a combination of single fast strikes against Dragoon. However, since it didn't have a Bit Beast within it, Tyson was easily able to overpower when he called on Dragoon. So question 3 is actually to do with the Asian tournament. Which team in the Asian tournament used Beyblades covered in wool? There was, believe it or not, a team where 2 of the 3 members did this. It was quite an unusual battle, and it was one that was... it wasn't to do with the Blade Breakers, it was actually one of the matches that the White Tigers had to face in their division. Like most of the tournament styles, and they used 2 different division leagues. So there was a Group A and a Group B. The White Tigers were in one of the groups, and the Blade Breakers were in the other, and therefore they wouldn't have faced these members because the White Tigers were able to overpower them. And the answer was the Spin Shepherds. 2 of their members, Bobby and the other one, both used wool within the outer limits of their Beyblade. The purpose of this was to cushion any blows, and by doing that, by the Beyblades constantly from the opponent attacking into the wool, it was absorbing all the hits and making the Beyblades for the opponents much weaker, reducing their spin, and the whole purpose was to have them kind of basically fail and to stop spinning. Against them, there were 3 members of the White Tigers. These were Kevin, who used his bear axe, Mariah, who very much toyed around with her opponent, not really taking it that seriously, and then she called upon her Galax, which then just shredded straight through the opponent's Beyblade within an instant. In the final match, however, obviously the captain of that team was very angry with the situation, and he wanted to try and take some sort of pride back for his teammates. Unfortunately, he went up against the White Tiger team leader, who was Lee. Unlike the other 2 members of the Spin Shepherds, he focused on a very offensive blade, which in his case was a mistake. He tried to outpower Galleon with a straightforward direct attack, but Lee instantly dodged that and overpowered the attack-based blade, resulting in a 3-0 victory. Question 4 is a little bit actually nearer the end of the original series in Beyblade. It is, which character swapped out his Bit Beast in Russia and what was its name? This actually gives a lot of the background to this particular character, and we see a side of this character that we haven't seen before, both a darker side and a lot to do with how they were raised as a child. I think this was actually quite good as a direction for the character, because we saw bits of the past, bits whilst they're training, but nothing really came together until near the end of the series. where actually even the relationships between a number of characters was explained in much greater detail. And the answer is Kai, and the Bit Beast is Black Dronza. Now, Kai was seen to be training in Russia from a very young age. He was amongst some of the recruits who were training to hone their skills to become a Beyblade army. They were learning the discipline. Unfortunately, at the age Kai was, he was the person in charge as a grandson. This was not a good thing when he was that young, because he was unable to control the power of Black Dronza, which he actually saw in a demonstration against a lot of weaker blades. It was able to be quite balanced as a blade. It didn't go too offensive or too defensive. It was able to switch between both of them. It was able to completely destroy other Beyblades, and its power was quite overwhelming. At that time, Kai was unable to control, and he actually was seen to be forgetting it. Later on, when he returns with the Blade Breakers, he gets this urge to go back into his past and returns to the Abbey where he originally trained. He ends up stumbling across that power, and as a result ends up taking it on the condition that he will formally resign from the Blade Breakers. He does this in quite an unusual way, because rather than make any sort of announcement, he just disappears. The Blade Breakers actually go after him in the Abbey, of which they don't actually get to see him. They just say that he has fallen ill, but actually he appears within the tournament and actually beats, I believe it was the All-Stars. It was either it was the White Tigers that he faced on his own. He didn't have any support from the Blitzkrieg Boys, who were the Russian representatives, and was able to steal basically most of the Bit Beasts that the White Tigers possessed, except for, I think, Kevin's, but then that was only because he's their substitute member. He didn't get a chance. Therefore, all the other Bit Beasts were kind of absorbed within Black Dronza. This was the biggest concern, because its ability to absorb the powers of the other Bit Beasts means that it could become all-powerful eventually, which is something they ended up having to try and stop. The next question 5, is to look at the some of the alternative characters within the series, still within the first series. It is, who was the first of the European champions the Blade Breakers faced, and what was the Bit Beast called? Now, this should be quite a simple question, just because this person was revealed quite easily. However, you could, I suppose, confuse it, because it was a particular member of the Blade Breakers who faced this individual, and not the whole team. They did actually end up turning up, but only once all the commotion had started, once they actually had a Bay battle. And the answer is Robert Jurgens and Grifolian. I didn't actually know his second name was Jurgens. I had never seen that information before actually searching for it. He was actually on a ship the same as the Blade Breakers. Initially, he was just watching some amateur kids just practicing, but what they ended up doing was they kind of teased him and kind of called him a coward. and that kind of got in his nerves, and thought, you know what, I'm actually going to show these brats and teach them a lesson. He ends up completely destroying them without the need of his bit beast, just using the blade in and of itself. The kids start crying as a result, and Tyson actually hears about this. He's not happy about it, and so chooses to go on to actually make a couple of things known. He says that he is the person from the Beyblade Breakers, and that he officially challenges him to Robert to a bay battle. They end up in the bay battle. Initially, Tyson does use his bit beast, but eventually, when he gets pushed around a lot, because Robert's Beyblade, I think, is one of the largest in the standard regulation class. You can't have anything, I think, bigger than what his was. And there were a couple who were similar to that within something like the Asian tournament. There was a one that was just in the I think it was the regulation weight limit for that for the Asian tournament. But Robert gets annoyed and says, "You know what? I didn't need to use my bit beast against these kids. But you think that just showing your dragoon is going to be enough? Think again." He summons his Graffolian, who is massive in comparison to Dragoon, and he just outright beats him and completely overpowers Dragoon. It's believed by Kenny, who is their technician for the Blade Breakers, that if Dragoon hadn't submitted when it had, the likelihood is that his blade would have been completely destroyed. The next question is actually a follow-up of the first meeting, and that is in relation to Robert. What was the name of the first episode Robert appeared in? This was a little bit into the series itself, and they'd already completed the Asian, and I think it was the American championships at the time, and therefore they were kind of looking around Europe to try and learn more about the different abilities and the battling styles, and to kind of round out their team's knowledge. And the answer is Cruising for a Bruising. This was very appropriate because this was a clash between Dragoon and Graffolian. This is the first time that Tyson had ever seen a Dragoon to be as overwhelmed as it had been, and that went to teach him a very valuable lesson that just because he thinks his bit beast is the strongest doesn't mean that there are various techniques that aren't around that can deal with Dragoon, and he's learnt that there's a lot more versatile bit beasts out there that have a lot more powers he's just unaware of. Okay, so question 7 is which member of the All-Stars was not seen after the original series? Like some of the other characters, they weren't seen after the various tournaments. For example, with the White Tigers, Bruce wasn't seen after that first meeting. In the same that with the Blitzkrieg boys, the I think his name was Ian, was kind of kicked out because maybe it's because of his kind of dirty techniques. There was also another member, as of the All-Stars, who was a little bit like this. We don't get given an official reason as to what happened to him, but I suppose if you see the match where he was facing Tyson, that'll kind of give you a reason why they wouldn't want to keep him on, as he gets very angry and he has no patience. He's not able to kind of critically think, and a lot of the instruction he just has to follow, in which case he doesn't always do that. And the answer is Stephen. Like all of the members of the All-Stars, they all specialise within various sports. In particular, for example, Emily focuses on tennis, Eddie is basketball, Michael is baseball, and Stephen is American football, or as we have in the UK, it's rugby. He had a bit called Trihorn. He was in the very first match against Tyson when they were facing each other, the All-Stars versus the Blade Breakers. He ends up trying to go against what the coach is instructing, getting quite angry, whilst he has a communication feed in his helmet to listen to what the coach is requesting of him, and he gets given the tactics slightly ahead of time. He ends up getting prodded and poked and annoyed by Tyson, who won't stay in place. The dome they were using was I think it was like a New York City kind of one, where it wasn't a straightforward battle. It was paving through loads of little city buildings, and Stephen kept ploughing his Trihorn through the buildings, steadily weakening its power. This helped Tyson to gain the advantage by just being able to kind of fluster Stephen and eventually kind of overpowering him. Okay, so question 8 is, what was the name of the White Tiger tribe in the manga? Like most series, the anime sometimes usually comes after the manga, because they'll have different anime panels which they can properly build up stories from. Again, this is something I hadn't realised until I had actually started doing research on this. It's not too difficult a name, but it was just something I was unaware of. Like everything, you can't be aware of everything, so it was just a little nice little interesting fact I thought I'd add to the quiz. And the answer is the Fang tribe. According to this, they are all a clan living in the mountains of China. And members of the Fang tribe are all Nekojin, which are humans with cat-like characteristics, or have been classified to contain feline DNA. They are believed to share a number of physical qualities with cats, including most of the time you see their eyes are golden and turn to slits like a cat's when they get angry or tense. They have quite pointy teeth which resemble cat's teeth, and under their eyes you can see 3 lines are visible, which could be a replacement for whiskers, and they have the ability to jump very high and land on their feet. As of now, the known members include Ray, Lee, Mariah, Gary, Kevin, and of course their coach, which we see in season 3, whose name is Tao. Okay, the next question is, which team did the All-Stars fear within the American Championships? Throughout the American Championships, they had been collecting data on all the various teams. However, there was one in which they were concerned of, from the point of view that no one knew who they were. They were kind of making a name for themselves within the tournament without having much of a track record. They were 3 random people who kind of got together just as a group without any real common purpose or goal. And this is kind of what scared the All-Stars, because they didn't really have anything to deal with. They didn't know how to counteract them. And I remember Emily warning I think it was Max, to be careful of them, because with this unpredictability, that was often how they had overpowered the opponent's teams in the past. And the answer is the Savage Slammers. They were the representatives for Ecuador, and they all came from the Galapagos archipelago. So all of their members were accustomed to blading within nature, which was part of what the problem was. The field that was put up was land with sea around it, so it represented an island. They were impossible to understand and had been described as unusual or elusive. Ray was unable to kind of understand how they were, and he underestimated them. Because of this, he actually lost his match. They did actually come up with quite a strange story for each of them as to how their Beyblades acquired the kind of animal natures that they gained. For example, their members were Diego, who had an iguana-style Beyblade, Fernando, whose abilities included having it act like a seal, and Axel, whose Beyblade was referred to as the Torsus Grenade. It had high defense and could slam into you incredibly aggressively. They eventually lost, but it was a very close turn. It could have been a very close turn of events for the Blade Breakers. And the final question is, which person represented Scotland in the first series, and what was their bit beast called? This isn't a difficult question. Again, where is Scotland? Which kind of continent would it represent in general anyway, so it's quite easy information. But you should be able to remember he was, for the little time we saw him, quite a strong character. And I don't think it would have been one that would have been easily forgotten. And the answer was Johnny, and he had a bit beast called Salamolian. He was the representative for Scotland. He is referred to as the Gladiator of Glasgow. This is because he is aware of his skill level and represented the... he was classified as the second strongest member of the Majestics. It was Robert, then Johnny, then Enrique, and last Oliver. As for his personality, he was very much quite a rude and impatient person. He has kind of this hot temper amongst him, and was seen to be able to be provoked very easily. He comes with the others from nobility, and really didn't enjoy having to work as a team with any of the other members, saying that he wouldn't have his legendary status if he was just part of a whole instead of being the strong individual that he is. So how did you do with the quiz? Do you like these quizzes? Leave any comments you have down below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe.